Alright, this video is about a new 3D printer that I just received. I bought it from GearBest, and I will declare that I did get a discount on it because I knew I was going to be making a video about it, so I did get to save some money. And it just arrived, and you can see it's a fairly large box. It's a ANYCUBIC Chiron, and it's a very large size printer. It's a 400 by 400 by 450 build area, and I've been wanting to get a bigger one for some time now for some projects I have lined up, and this was a great chance. So I ordered it from GearBest, and it wasn't supposed to ship until the end of July. Turned out that they had them in the USA warehouse, and I wound up getting it in less than 2 weeks, so it was pretty amazing how fast they actually did ship this thing. So you may want to look for that if you want something quick from them to, get one of the local warehouse ones. And it arrived in good shape. They shipped it FedEx, and FedEx didn't actually destroy the box on me. They did a good job on it, and you can see it's really broken down into two parts. There's the upright part, and then the base. Plus it comes with a assortment of parts to put it together. So you can see it was packaged well, and actually there's looks like a half a kilo of filament that they supply with it also, which I'll use for starting out in this video and making my first prints. Comes with everything that you need to get going with it. Basically, they give you a USB cable. I didn't actually hook it up to my computer, and they give you a spatula there for prying the putty knife, I guess, for prying the thing apart. All the tools you need to assemble it, and then there's some stiffening brackets for the upright frame. And the amazing thing is you actually get a whole hot end assembly all ready to pop in there. That's really a great feature for the price of this unit. And then it comes with a power cord and a bracket to hold the roll of filament, and it really did come with a great instruction manual. If you use this manual, you can put this together and get it working, I guarantee you that. And it also came with a little card saying that the quality was checked on it, memory card, and then there's a probe there to use for the auto leveling, and a couple of little cleaners for the nozzles. So, there's how it looks when you unpack it. That's everything that I received there. And it's time to get ready to put it together. So, it was wrapped up good. They had some plastic wrapped around here, some saran wrap holding everything together and protecting it, keeping it from banging around too bad. And one of the main reasons why I wanted to go with this printer is the bed surface itself. I'll show you in a little while how nice that works, but it did have some big tie wraps holding everything together for shipping and stuff, so it wouldn't get damaged. And it's a real simple job to put it together. The upright assembly is, all put together there, and I just had to put in 4, I think they were M5 by 25 millimeter socket head screws that come up from the bottom there to hold that together. Everything lined up good on it. And then I just I snugged them up a little bit because there's some side brackets that you have to put on next, so you don't want to really crank them down yet. So then I put these side brackets on. This is the first one. They have the screws and little T-nuts on them already. You just hold them in place and turn them, and they lock in place. If you follow the the instructions that come with it, it's real easy to put together. And there you can see, you just line the T-nuts up in the right direction, and once you start tightening them with the hex wrench, they actually turn and make sure that they lock in place in the extrusion there, and everything's set to go. And it was time to go back and just tighten all these up and tighten up those other vertical bolts, make sure everything was good and snug. And it was good, snug, and it was all nice and square and everything when it was together. And then the little control panel there is actually mounted with the face in, so you just have to take the 2 screws out of the extrusion in the front there, turn it around sideways, and mount it where they show in the side extrusion there, so you can actually read it and use it So, you know, that's pretty much it for the assembly. Now comes the cabling. You can see these two main cables are actually color coded. The red connector plugs in, and the blue connector, and they're keyed, so there's only one way that they go in. And then on each side there's a cable that plugs into the stepping motor for the Z. There's double Z drives on here, and there's also a cable for the sensor, because there's a leveling sensor on each side. So you can see I did one side and then just go over and plug the other side in, and make sure that these cables are tied back so they will not hit any moving parts when the printer is running. So you just want to, you know, make sure everything's out of the way there. And then there's a filament holder, and it's just a little sheet metal bracket that two screws. You put a little extension on it there to hold the roll, and that goes on the side, and they give you a dimension in the catalog to mount it back from the front. So I just double check that and then tighten down the actual hardware holding it in place. And then you want to go in, and on the side of the power supply there's a switch, 120, 220, and I actually had to switch mine. Mine was set up for the 220, and then the power cord plugs right in there. And this is a roll of filament that they shipped with. It was all sealed well and stuff, and figure I'll start with this for getting the thing set up and running. Now these 3D printers, actually what I went through with my CR10 when I bought it was, it took a while to get everything worked out and the bugs worked out and to get it printing decent. So, you know, I expected that kind of. But the main reason I went with this printer was this bed. It's got a bed on it that you don't need any of the tape or any of the glue sticks or any of that. It's supposed to have good, when it's warm, the PLA is supposed to adhere to it. When it's cold, it's supposed to pop right off. And I just threw a straight edge across there to get a look at it, and it did come in really nice and flat. And then it's time to power it up for the first time here. Take a couple seconds for it to, you know, boot up here, and then you go into a menu, and I wanted to feed the filament first. So there's just a little button there that you press and get the filament started first. And you have to go through the sensor, and I like to cut about a 45-degree angle on the end of the roll. Get rid of all that crooked stuff on the end, so it will feed right through the sensor there with no problem. And then it just goes into the extruder there, and you pull out the little lever and just slide it in a little bit to get it started. Then you hit the filament in button on the control panel there. And first thing it does is it says, okay, we're going to bring the nozzle up to temperature, so we can extrude through it and get it fully loaded. So you give it a couple minutes, and once it hits the temperature, it will allow you to advance the filament up through the extruder. So you just hit that button, and you let it run until you start seeing some come out of the nozzle there. And you can see it just kind of turns by itself, and then you hit the stop button once you feel that it's the filament's in place and ready to go. And you'll see it extruding out of the nozzle. So there it is, all loaded, and now the printer is basically, ready to start leveling up and, get ready to go. So then you put in the SD card, contains some files on it, and one is a manual leveling G-code. So first thing you do is you run the manual leveling. You want to get it real close manually. And actually I did some printing after the manual leveling, to tell you the truth. So once that file runs, you go back and you do the manual leveling. And I think all that does is allows it to record it in memory. So I use a piece of paper and just do the 5 areas, exactly the sequence that they tell you to do it in, and they show you right in the manual there. It's a good picture of it. So I went through the manual leveling, and actually it came out pretty good. And then there's a level test G-code that I decided to run now. I didn't want to do the auto right at this moment because I know these things always require some tweaking. So I started by running that level test there. And you can see it pretty much zeros and homes, and then it goes out and the fan down there in that power supply is quite noisy. That's about the biggest noise coming out of this whole printer. The printer itself is fairly quiet, at least compared to my CR10. And then it just starts running the 400 millimeter diameter leveling test on there. And you can pretty much see the manual leveling of this did get it really, really close. It looks pretty good. A couple areas had some problems in it, but basically it did look pretty good for the first time around. About the only thing that I noticed is the top surface of it didn't really come out that smooth. This does take about 3 hours to run this test. It's basically 3 layers thick, and this printer is a very large printer with a lot of big masses, so it does not move that fast. And you can see there's 44 minutes into it. It's got like the first layer down, and then it's going to put 2 more layers down. And looking at the back of it, you see the cables actually are strain relief pretty good for the bed and stuff. I was a little worried about that because I had some problems with my CR10 with that. And I just let this thing run, and it seemed to run pretty good. I did notice a little bit with that cable chain. When the cable chain goes all the way over to the left, there is some stress on it. I'll show you that in a second. But basically, it took 3 hours and 4 minutes to run this first leveling test. And the results were pretty good. A little bit of a rough surface on it. I wasn't really happy with that, but I figure I still have some fine-tuning to do. So this is my first chance here to see, how well this bed actually works and how well it releases. You can see it held that print down great, and it's still warm here, and it's really bonded to the bed really good. The print didn't lift or anything, which pretty much amazed me. Then I gave it a couple minutes to come down to to cool down to room temperature, and the part picked right off of there. It's really pretty amazing how well it worked. And it does look, the test did come out pretty good. There is some real coarseness on the top layer there and stuff that's gonna have to be worked out, but yeah, it worked good. So then I decided, okay, I've got a part I'm gonna make here, and I figured I'd just start, I'm waiting for some different filament to come from Amazon, but I figured I'd just try to slice it in CURA and do 1 layer of it and see what it looked like. Now, I tried starting out with the latest level of CURA that I have on my computer for my CR10, and it turns out that I used the Chiron actual setup on that, and I had nothing but problems. You can see, I'm getting a pretty good first layer here, the line on it, but I wound up having all kinds of over extrusions, and the nozzle was actually kind of dragging down in the plastic itself. You can see there, and it just wasn't going to give me a good print. So I actually let it run for a couple hours here just to see, what would happen. And it kind of got a little bit worse as time went on. You can see it's kind of ragged. It's just not really good even layers, and there are all kinds of problems with it. So I figured, well, let's stop it and check what's going on. It turned out there was some play in that in the extruder there. The wheel was loose, and it was a little bit down in the bed too. So I decided to just tighten this up, and it was good and tight when I started out. And I figure it had been running for 3, 4, 5 hours. I figured these things usually take a while to break in. I know my CR10 I had to adjust it after about 20 hours. So I just pulled that apart, and it was just an eccentric down on the bottom wheel, and it apparently this was never properly tightened up at the factory. The eccentric had turned, it looks like, and loosened up, and I could feel that it had a lock nut on it, but just was never tightened down so the eccentric wouldn't turn. So they do give you a nice wrench for for setting the eccentric there, and then I just went back and I got it so that it feels pretty good and tightened it up. Now there is one little flat spot you can feel on one of the wheels. I haven't really gone through and tried to figure out which one it is. I'm going to order a couple more wheels and try to get that worked out, but I did get it moving pretty smoothly. And actually I tried doing another print, and still this is with that CURA, the latest level of CURA slicing, and same problems, but still had some issues with alignment there, and I figured, well, I might as well, before I mess with it too much more, I might as well try to tighten this bed up now too, because same thing happened. Apparently that cam that moves the two wheels on the bed there, actually four, had shifted, and the bed was actually loose there too. So this is no fun to go in and tighten this up and stuff. This one side here on the left is pretty easy. You can just get in there from the side and do the adjustment. I looked under it. The other side's a little bit of a problem. I'll show you in a second. So this one side here was easy to set up, and I could get the wrenches and stuff right in there from the side because there was no power supply on it. And I went back and they all were a little bit loose, so I tightened everything up. And then for the other side, I wound up having to pull out the controller and the power supply and to get at those bolts to tighten everything up. So it did take me a while for that. And then I went back and without leveling the bed, I just figured, well, let's see what happened. I tried running it, and you can see it's really pretty crazy. Just lost the level completely when I tightened that up. So this time I did the manual bed leveling first, and then I'm going back and I'm going to try the auto bed leveling. Figure I'll see how that works. So you just put this little sensor on. It's got a magnetic block, and you plug it in, and then you run the auto bed leveling program, and it goes around and it probes 25 points on the bed, and it just hits them twice like that, and it records a number and shows any deviation from flatness. So that it's really pretty simple, and it ran well. It ran all by itself, and then after you get done running that, you start printing, and it turns out it's 2 millimeters above the bed, the actual nozzle, when you start. And you go into the control panel and you drop it a little bit at a time until you get a pattern exactly like you want for your first layer. And it turned out that basically after I got that set, it saved it in memory and it got perfect layers. But there you can see that little cable chain is kind of putting stress on that when it goes all the way over. There's an awful lot of stress, so I might have to twist that a little bit. But basically you can see it got much better results here, much better finish on the top layer. A little bit of raggedness there where that cable chain seems to be pulling on it, but I'm still getting the over extrusion when I try running that original CURA profile. So I finally went back and I loaded the old version of CURA that they give you on the SD card, and did some slicing on that to see if it made a difference. And here's that little robot that you get with CURA, and what a difference it made. So you can see the older version of CURA gave me good results, so I'm gonna really have to spend some time with the newer one to see if I can get it working. I printed out that little robot, and then I went back and I decided to do a 3 times the size of the robot. You can see perfect first layer, and I did get a little bit of sag from the overhang, which I'm not sure if I can modify that. But another thing I wasn't really happy with is this motor, the way they mount it. They've got it hanging off one of those rubber dampers. You can see how it's pulled to one side there. So probably in the future I'm just going to pull that out, because they're not made to be used in that direction. They're more made for just a twisting action. So like over 7 hours later, this little guy was done, and decided to take a look. And you have to let the bed cool down. When it's hot, the stuff won't come off no matter what you do. let it cool down, room temperature. Actually, it's about 60 degrees down here in my shop now. Pops right off, and pretty good job. There still is some problems with the Z lines I could see. And it wasn't quite perfect yet, but it's getting close, getting better every time I mess with something. And you see the brim peeled right off, and this is really starting to look good now. So then I went back and I looked, and I found out that these lead screws that they have, that brass nut's got a 0.5 millimeter of backlash in it, and that's probably causing my problem. So I'm going to get some of the zero backlash nuts like I used on my CNC on the router that I made with the lead screws on it, and that should solve that problem. And I decided to just go and put down the first layer of that bracket that I just had sliced in the old CURA, and there goes the second layer down. You can see I'm getting perfect layers now, perfect adhesion, really nice thickness of them and stuff. So I think using the old CURA really made it work out, and that's the one that they do give you with it. So, and again, this bed is just wonderful. When the stuff cools, you can just pull it right off. So that was that was my sample, and I'm ready to go do a little bit of printing now. It looks like you see really nice adhesion and nice layers. And I ordered a roll of a shiny silver PLA from Amazon, and that just came. So here we are trying that out for the first time now. The material itself seems to be a little stringier and softer than the other PLAs that I've used in the past, but you can see it was wound perfectly on the spool. I just couldn't believe it. And here we are a couple hours into that print. You can see everything's going really nice. Layers are nice and uniform. Everything's got proper adhesion, and the only thing I'm seeing is a little bit of stringing on it. And I do like to wrap up the old stuff and just vacuum seal it with the sealer. But so far everything's looking good. I'm real happy. I think I've got most of the adjustments worked out on it. And the big thing is trying to figure out how to get rid of the stringiness with this PLA. I did play with the temperature a little bit, and I didn't go too wild with it because the print was really coming out fairly decent. So I just kind of let it run, and for now I'm gonna not worry about the stringiness on this print. And you can see this is probably after about 19 or 20 hours here, starting to build up there and stuff. And there's like a layer shift line you can see down where the part intersected the 3/4 inch thick base here, but otherwise everything else looks really nice. And a little bit of layer shift on the side there where that cable chain is pulling a little bit tight. But otherwise, it looks like it's doing. It took 22 hours and 37 minutes to print this little bracket that I'm making for some holding some clamps on my new workbench. Now, I'd never used this shiny metallic look PLA before, but you can see it did come out fairly decent there. Any kind of, with the shininess, any kind of imperfections really do jump out at you. But I don't think there's anything there that once I put some zero backlash nuts on that Z-axis, I think this will be running really good, and just figure out the best temperature and settings for the retraction to get rid of this stringing, because this stuff is a pretty gooey PLA. But there you can see I'm real happy with the results, except for the the stringing. I've got to remove that, but that doesn't really affect the part once it's gone. And I just took a little sandpaper and kind of knocked off what I could there, and just did a temporary, put on a piece of plywood to show you. This will hold, each one of these will hold 12 clamps in my new workbench. They're going to be mounted right on the sides of it. So it looks like it's gonna work out good, and got my first piece done. I'm going to make 2 more of them. And in the end, with a little bit of fiddling, it looks like it's going to be a really great printer, and it's going to be able to do some larger items. Like I've got some ideas for stacking my canning jars and stuff like that. So this will get a good workout over the coming weeks. And if you do get one of these, I'd recommend that you check out all the hardware for tightness over the first couple hours. I did find a way to get rid of those strings really quick, and that's just take my little Bernzomatic map torch here and run real quick. You don't want to hold it on long because it will melt it and burn it, but just quickly they just kind of melt right away and disappear. So that was an easy way to get rid of them I came up with. So, like I was saying, these printers, my CR10 went through the same thing, and they all require adjustment. Those little wheels wear in and stuff, after the first couple of hours. And the bed leveling on this actually works really great. That automatic leveling was just so easy, and it came out perfect, so I'm happy with that. And, a little bit of frustration in the beginning, but now I think it'll be a great printer for my needs. So for around $400, this printer really does seem like a good bargain compared to what I paid for my CR10 when I bought that thing. And I really like that metal look PLA. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.